Our Across the Aisle segment tonight. Should white supremacists be allowed on the internet? That is the question some are asking after Google and GoDaddy.com pulled website services from the white supremacist website, The Daily Stormer. That happened following the Charlottesville attack. Now, The Daily Stormer is a horrible website. They advocate reprehensible ideas. But does that in and of itself mean they aren't entitled to First Amendment protections? With me now, professor and author of Obama's America, A Transformative Vision of Our National Identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you, my friend.
Good to be back with you, Liz.
All right, Ian, this is an interesting segment. I've been looking forward to this all day. I want to start out by showing this video. It is a commentator from CNN talking about free speech and hate speech and whether or not hate speech constitutes free speech. Take a look at this.
Hate speech is not free speech. I don't care what the Supreme Court says, quite frankly.
Okay, you heard it. Hate speech is not free speech, he says. He doesn't care what the Supreme Court says. Ian, let me ask you, is hate speech, is that free speech?
Yes, absolutely. Hate speech is free speech. In the United States of America, people are free to hate, and they are free to talk about their hate. They're not free to act on it if they violate other laws, but speech, absolutely. Hate speech is free speech, and in fact, freedom of speech is alive and well in this country, especially given the fact that this white nationalist group not only was able to get a permit to march down the center of Charlottesville, Virginia, but they had the support of one of the largest liberal groups in the country, the ACLU, which fought tooth and nail to get them that permit. So the odd commentator on CNN aside, I'm really not seeing a great threat to freedom of speech in this country when it comes to the First Amendment at this point. I see a lot of other threats that are far greater, but I know you want to stick to this topic, which is fine.
No, I do want to talk about free speech. I mean, I agree with everything that you just said. I mean, clearly we agree that the views of these white supremacists is beyond reprehensible. I wish that it did not exist in this country. I don't know, frankly, if it's possible to eradicate every single hateful, bigoted, or racist opinion from every single person in a nation of 300 million. As cynical as that sounds, I'm glad that we're afforded the protection under our Constitution that their opinions don't make any difference in our lives or don't make any difference in the lives of the people that they're targeting. But just to confirm, I mean, I've seen a lot of articles, I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter. We hear people on other news networks talking about the fact that they're shocked that this white supremacist group did get a permit in Charlottesville, that they shouldn't have been afforded that permit because they wanted to talk about hate. I mean, I disagree with that. I disagree with their views, but I think they do have a right to, peacefully assemble as they did until the terror attack happened.
Right. Well, look, there are all kinds of questions about assembly, right? I mean, I remember at the I believe it was 2004, but it's not the only time at the Republican National Convention in New York. The people who wanted to protest were herded into what were euphemistically called free speech pens. The ACLU advocated for this group in Charlottesville. I'm not necessarily sure that they had to be allowed to march, down the center of the city, but they certainly should have been able to been allowed to march somewhere. So there are questions about where and when, but the question of whether a group should be allowed to peacefully assemble, there's no question about it. But I really am more concerned, frankly, than I am with the right of free speech being curbed. I'm more concerned with what some groups are doing with their right to free speech. Freedom of speech, of course, as you know, is not absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't use fighting words to incite violence. You can't advocate the overthrow of the government. So there, certainly are limits to it. But, to me, it sort of reminds me of you've got two houses on a street. One of them is on fire, and the other one has a place where the guy's thinking about using the wrong lawnmower. I'm not that worried about the guy using the wrong lawnmower. I think we should focus more on the house on fire. And that's really what I see coming from these white supremacists as being the greater threat to freedom than a few commentators here and there.
Listen, I think we all condemn, obviously, the terror attack that killed that poor innocent woman who was also exercising her right to free speech. There's no disagreement, I would hope, from either side of the aisle on that. But I don't know if I feel that these people in general, these radical fringe element, these racists, are a threat. I'm going to talk about this in my final point, but this was the supposed largest white supremacist rally in the past 20 years in our nation. Only a couple hundred people showed up. There's 300 million people in our nation. A couple hundred people is the largest gathering of these people. If that's truly the case, we've come a long way in our nation, and that's actually a good thing that there's so few of these twisted people that are left in our nation. But I am still worried about the idea of free speech being infringed because there is such a growing movement that wants hate speech to be banned, not just shamed, not just culturally, I guess, reformed, if you will. Take these people that have hateful views and try to culturally help them to be right. That's one thing. People want hate speech to be banned. We had Google and GoDaddy, that's the website hosting service. They actually banned this white supremacist website from being hosted on either the website hosting service or in the search engine. I don't agree with a single thing on this website. It's a reprehensible website, but I'm not sure that these businesses should have prevented them from having a platform.
Well, first let me say I know you do, and I've seen your interview with Richard Spencer, who was a hateful guy from last December, and I thought you did a very good job with him, without going to, But I think Google is on solid ground here. Google is not the government. First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law. So private organizations are under no obligation to take on any customer that they want to. So I do see what Google's doing there as a matter of choice. I mean, look,
It's called cultural Marxism, though. It's cultural Marxism. I understand that the First Amendment, allows businesses to operate any way they want. Google probably has a right to be doing this. So does GoDaddy. It bothers me for two reasons. First of all, when you have cultural Marxism, when you have a culture that doesn't accept free speech because people find it offensive, that in and of itself nullifies our right to free speech. It nullifies the idea that we're allowed to express ourselves even when it's offensive to others. And that scares me, because when someone else is in a position to abuse that power, Ian, your views, your progressive views, or my views, my conservative views, they could be censored based off of the fact that private companies, which are influenced by the government, especially one as big as Google, that could eliminate our right, our ability, our opportunity to express ourselves, and that is dangerous.
Well, I'm less, look, I'm glad that you're optimistic about the potential threat from white supremacists and white nationalists. I'm more optimistic than you are about this potential threat to free speech. People have the right to speak. People have the right to be offended by that speech. I think I want to make sure that we live in a society where everybody is free to express themselves. They don't necessarily have the right to express themselves on whichever medium they want to. But they have to be able to get their views out there. And in the world of the internet, there are lots of ways to get out there. I'm not too worried about that.
I don't know if you have Google against you. If you have Google against you in this day and age, you don't have much of a platform. Like I said, I am in no way and never would defend anything that's published on this website, but I do defend their right to say these things, because if it happens to someone else, it could happen to us. And if it could happen to us, knowing our government, it probably will happen to us. And I think that should scare us all a little bit, because constitutionally, there's a reason why we have free speech, so that no one can stop us from saying and doing and living our lives the way that we choose to live our lives. Ian, we do have to go. Thanks for being here today.